Yes, welcome in. A little delayed episode, but here we are, ready to talk about the end of fall camp and get into our depth chart, Jesse. A little nasty Monday here in Madison. Not very pretty out, but football is near.
10 days away. And this is a day we don't have to attend practice because, as you said, Zach, the last of the open practices ended Saturday. We got a chance to see the first 15 practices, which is very rare for most schools, but obviously has us with a pretty firm understanding of what this team looks like. And obviously, we're going to talk about it.
We are. We're going to get into all of it, project the depth chart. We haven't been able to really do that yet until camp was over. Now we have an opportunity to do that. So looking forward to doing that. Before we get started, for those listening, just want to remind you, we do have a YouTube page to go and check out. Post all the episodes up there and then interviews and has some obviously practice footage here from the first 15 practices. That'll now be put on hiatus until spring ball gets going. But for now, there's some the stuff on Saturday actually was kind of worthwhile. We got to see some Skelly, got to see some one-on-ones. So go check that out. It's the camp YouTube page. Give us a follow. We would appreciate it. And also coming up this week is the start of Thorson and Heilprin back at Monks and Sun Prairie. You remember Monks and Sun Prairie?
I am familiar with it, yes.
It was Temple and Heilprin there for a year, which was fun. We are there every Thursday from 6 to 7. I actually had to go out there last night, Jesse, and test out the beer just to make sure it was okay. And I just want to let everybody know the beer is tasty. They also have some truffle fries that were amazing last night, too. They got some wings, pizza. It's a great place to go. So we'll be out there every Thursday. Ebo from the Zone Morning Show here in Madison and me will be out there every Thursday. So if you want to stop out and say hi, we'd appreciate it. Or stop out to Monks anytime.
This is why I appreciate you, Zach. You always go the extra mile. Sometimes you just got to test out the beer and the fries just to make sure it's on point for when everybody wants to go out and listen.
Yep, I tested the beer out there, and then I tested the beer out at Rips here in Wanakee, and then LG here in Wanakee, and then also Buck and Honey's here in Wanakee. So I got around, but my fave obviously is Monks and Sun Prairie. That's my place. That's my favorite bar. And we're there every Thursday, as I said, me and Ebo. So check it out. All right, let's jump into this. We got to see a ton of scrimmaging there on Saturday morning on the field north of Camp Randall. And I think we're just going to go position by position here and kind of feel where things are at. You can check out Jesse's work at BadgerConnect.com. He went position by position and broke down exactly what he's seen through those first 15 practices. And we're going to do a little bit of a scaled down version of that. But projecting the depth chart, we know who the starting quarterback is. It is obviously Billy Edwards Jr. And, you know, there was some very good and there was some and there was a lot of in between for Billy in these practices so far, the practices that we got to see.
Yeah, I feel like he did what he needed to do. Obviously, last Monday, banged knees with a defender, and that held him out for a little bit, but he was able to participate in some team stuff. It should be certainly fine for the opener, which again is 10 days away. I think he's the right quarterback for this system for a number of reasons. First of all, Jeff Grimes was talking about how important he's been for the installation of everything they're doing, that there's a lot on his plate, all these motions, all these shifts, all these different formations. You need a quarterback like Billy who's been there to be able to lead everybody. From an on-field standpoint, I think if they can run the ball effectively, he's the type of quarterback who can help keep them on schedule. Some of those shorter intermediate throws, I don't know how many times they're going to air it out off play action. He is certainly capable of it. I felt as though he generally limited his mistakes. And yes, when we see 15 practices and they're throwing as many balls as they are, there are going to be some bad throws. But I like what I've seen from him. And the backup job is the one that remains at least a question mark, according to Luke Fickell. I've sort of been surprised by his responses the last two Saturdays when he specifically asked about the backup competition between Hunter Simmons and Danny O'Neal, because it felt like he didn't know based on what he had just seen, as though neither one had impressed enough to establish himself. And he said he felt that competition would continue even into this week. If I had to pick, I think it's going to be Danny O'Neal. I think he's done enough, though obviously O'Neal and Simmons have continued to split some reps. But I think the fact that Danny was here in the spring helps get those 15 spring practices and the mobility and some of the things he can do. Hunter's got a good arm, but I just think Danny had fewer mistakes and brings more to the table.
Yeah, I don't think Hunter's arm is 10 times better than Danny's, right? Like it might be a little bit, but it's not like it's not a gun. This ain't a Deacon Hill arm, where sorry for I didn't mean to bring that name up, but like we know he had a strong arm. Couldn't put the ball where it needed to be, but he had a strong arm. Hunter has the ability to put the ball where he needs to. It's just not he doesn't have like the super huge arm, make every throw, and that's why he should be ahead of Danny. Like that's just not the case. So to me, and maybe this is a little unfair, this feels like a little bit at the end of fall camp or the end of Platteville last year where Luke said the 1A and 1B with Tyler Van Dyke and Braden Locke. We watched practice. We knew that Tyler Van Dyke felt like the better quarterback. We knew he was the starter. It feels like he's just trying to keep competition going, and that's perfectly fine. But I would be shocked if it wasn't Danny O'Neil as if needed. Knock on wood, wherever you're sitting. We don't want to see a backup. Again, nothing against those guys. You don't want to see a backup quarterback. But would you agree with that? Like it feels like if there's going to be a quarterback needed tomorrow, it would be Danny.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I know they have split some snaps, but there are certain situations where you see, well, who's going out there first and who's executing. And it's not like Danny going out there and throwing 5 touchdown passes. And that's part of the challenge too, is
right.
Who actually is standing out consistently. There are certain moments, but of course, I think he will ultimately be the backup quarterback. And we'll see what happens in terms of potential redshirting or medical redshirting or who's around. But at the very least, they had a couple guys who could push each other, which is not something Danny was dealing with in the spring because you only had 3 scholarship quarterbacks and you had Carter Smith. And of course, he is the other scholarship quarterback in that room. It's tough to make headway when you're working with the third team offensive line. And I thought it was interesting on Saturday, he was the only quarterback who didn't have the black non-contact jersey, which I thought was a good thing. First of all, he's not ready to play right now, but what does it look like when you're under pressure, when you're going to get hit? His biggest strength is getting outside of the pocket on the run. And there were a couple times where he made nice runs. And if you had a black jersey on, you would have been tagged after 2 yards or you would have evaded a defender and you wouldn't have known. And that is his strong suit. So I'm still excited about Carter, but obviously he's behind those other 3 quarterbacks.
Absolutely. So we're not going to see him this year. And you would assume whichever quarterback they end up going with as the backup, the other guy would potentially be around, the guy that we don't see either. So I don't want to see any of the backup quarterbacks this year after the last couple of years, but if history holds or if history repeats itself, you may need them for a game or two, right? That's just that's college football. And hopefully that is not the case. But as we saw with the guy just banging knees, any little thing, and you could be needing that guy. So that's quarterback. At running back, it's also very interesting to top the depth chart. We know the top 3 are going to play, right? How many reps are they actually going to get? But if I ask you 1, 2, 3, who is it right now?
I think Dylan Jones is going to be the number 1. That practice he had in Platteville a week and a half ago is the kind of thing that raises expectations. I get it. It's not a full-on move the ball scrimmage, and you didn't replicate it every single day, but there are just some of those runs you go, wow, a 74-yard touchdown run, the 30-yard toss play, the way he ran up the middle from the 15, got down to the 1. He's unproven, right? He played in 3 games a year ago, had a great run against Purdue. So I'm not going to sit here and say he's the next name running back who was a Doak Walker Award winner, but I think from those 3, he gives you the most potential. I would also say this is not going to be a 90% carries on him and whoever's left over gets a handful like we've seen in some of those other seasons. I think Darian Dupree is the number 2, and maybe it's 1 series, 1 guy, or maybe Dylan gets 2, Darian gets in. We'll have to see. I'm interested to see what Devin Spalding decides to do. They do some different things. Darian is fully capable of running between the tackles and knocking some dudes over, but his pass catching ability, his speed off the edge, and then Cade Yakimelli, he's going to play. I just don't know what that looks like, even still after watching 3 weeks of practices, because how many carries or touches are going to be left, assuming Dylan and Darian are healthy, but he didn't do anything to prevent him from earning those opportunities. So it could be a situation. I think of it like in basketball. If Greg Gard's rotation at the start of the year is 10, all of a sudden it's 9 or 8 when you get into conference play. Is that what we're going to see, where early in the year you give touches to all 3 and then figure out what that looks like? Or is this going to be consistent throughout? But all 3 of them have earned the right to play. Devin said that. Jeff Grimes said that. And I would also say Gideon Atuka, he is good enough to play if needed, but those first three are the ones that they're going to be looked at right away.
So I take Cade Giacomelli's importance this way. On Saturday, the third teamers were going. It might have been the second team, third team, right on the goal line. And Gideon Atuka was in there, but they were using him in a different way. And Cade Giacomelli ran in, and Luke Fickell's like, no, get out of there. And he ended up staying in because he wasn't getting the ball. But that's what I kind of feel about how they feel about Cade's importance, right? Like, you don't want him getting hurt in a meaningless scrimmage like that. And Luke recognized it quickly and was like, no, get out. But he does hold importance. I just don't know. The rep count is going to be really, really tough for sure. I thought Darian was really solid. I don't know that there were a ton of big time plays from him in camp, right? Unless you disagree.
I would agree with that. But I still can see why they're so excited about that potential
Absolutely.
tandem. So the scrimmage on Saturday was kind of like it was the week before, where the ones got a couple series, and it was mostly young guys, and they didn't give Dylan as many reps as he's gotten in the past. So that gave perhaps Darian more, but I think the second run that he had was like a 13-yarder up the middle, and it showed you a little bit of what he has. But sure. I would agree, there weren't a bunch of, he broke off a 40-yard run. The Cade one is interesting also because he can do a little bit of everything. He can do everything that is necessary. Is he better at those things than those other two guys? I'm not sure. But there's a lot to like about what he brings and the leadership and everything. And segue plug, Wednesday's Badger Bites is going to be an interview with Cade that I think is really good and helps you learn a little bit more about him. But no question in terms of leadership, his value on the field, though, I think it's still up in the air.
Yeah, for sure. And also, if we're being fair, Dylan was a little banged up in camp a couple of different times. So you're going to need him. And that's what Jeff Grimes said, right? You're going to need in this conference, the way you're playing, you're going to need multiple guys, and that's just the way it's going to be. And so there are going to be opportunities, as you said, for different guys to get the carries. Let's go to, can we call them fullbacks? It's obviously Jackson Aker and it's Tyler Janze, and that's what it is. They're going to be doing different things. Both of them considered tight ends, but we know what position they are, right?
Yeah, I was going to lump Jackson into the tight end group, but of course, there are going to be fullback snaps to be had, and he'll be the guy out there. And all of this, of course, the caveat is if these guys are healthy, it's the same thing with the running backs. If those top two are healthy, is there a role for Cade? But Jackson, he can do so many different things. He's shown it his entire career here. And as he said, this position fits him so well. So why not use someone who's best at a particular skill set when you have an offense that caters to it?
Right. And he got dinged up a little bit towards the end of camp as well. Was in a no contact jersey one of the final practice days, but I think he'll be fine and ready to go. Let's go to. If we're going to talk tight ends, let's just go to tight ends. And took a big hit, obviously, with Tucker Ashcraft going out with an injury that it's going to keep him out an extended period of time. We saw him on Saturday on a scooter with his left foot in a walking boot. So. It seems like it's going to be a pretty extended recovery for him. Hopefully they get him back. Jeff Grimes said they'll be ready for when he gets back, but they called him one of the most improved guys from spring to fall. And I know he's had a lot of opportunities these first 2 years and maybe hasn't necessarily put up huge numbers, but it felt like a guy that was kind of rounding into form, and they were going to count on him to be a blocker, count on him to be a pass catcher. And now it kind of moves everybody up a level. So without him, what does that depth chart look like?
Yeah, obviously it does move everybody up. I think Lance Mason had a really good preseason. Now Luke Fickell was talking about him right at Big Ten Media Days in Vegas. And I know you had said, well, maybe his role will be a little more significant than initially anticipated. And you can see why, particularly as a pass catcher. He has the kind of body type and sure hands to be a safety valve for Billy when he's throwing the ball on some of those shorter intermediate routes. But what do they do with that other spot, and how often do they use two tight ends we saw an awful lot of Grant Steck. And again, some of that had to do with Jackson being dinged up. If Jackson is healthy, you want him on the field. But it's how many of those snaps will come as a fullback. So Grant Steck, to me, is the one you're looking at to take a huge step forward. And he dealt with some injuries a year ago. It was a freshman year where he redshirted and he was still learning. He felt like he was in better position to be more of an all-around player. Physically, I think that skill set has always been there. That, to me, is the grouping you're going to see. But one thing I've liked about talking to Grimes, because we're still getting to know him, is he will give you an honest answer when you ask him about stuff. So when he was asked about the Tucker situation, he went on to say that this could mean we use less 2 tight end sets, which we know has been a staple of Grimes' offense, or essentially what he said is using different position groups to replicate what a 12 personnel looks like. So multiple running backs on the field, maybe you use wide receivers in some different ways, and we will get to wide receivers. But Chris Brooks Jr., as we've known, has had the body of a tight end, yet he plays wide receiver. Grimes called him the best blocking wide receiver. I can certainly see him being utilized in situations where you need him as more of a blocker. So there are a variety of options, but not having your top tight end certainly doesn't help things.
Yeah, no. So they have a couple different tight end positions, right? Like, so different guys are slotting in at different spots. So Grant Steck was essentially the guy behind Tucker Ashcraft, and Lance Mason was I would consider they have 3 starting tight ends. If you want to lump Jackson Aker in there, it was Lance Mason, it was Tucker Ashcraft, and it was Jackson Aker. But just because they play different spots within the scheme. So Lance Mason is going to play a ton. And we'll see if Grant Steck can step up and fill that hole. Specifically blocking, I think is really where they're probably going to count on him more so than being a pass catcher, though he showed certainly in the red zone the ability to go up and make some plays. We saw a pretty impressive touchdown down in Platteville where he went up over a guy, but the depth takes a bit of a hit without Tucker because you have Jackson McGohan, you have JT Seagreaves, and then it's, there's not a ton of other bodies there. But as you said, Chris Brooks has the body of a tight end. It's a guy that we've been wondering if they can move him to tight end. He played tight end on my EA college football last year. I feel like it's a pretty easy move, but he also changed numbers now. So I don't know if a number 1 can play tight end. I don't know if that's it looks weird. And he's also going to definitely, and this is not a shot at him, but he's definitely going to test the idea that you look automatically faster when you put a single digit on.
Shots fired.
Yeah. He's not slow by any stretch. He's a really good athlete. It just doesn't always look like he's going the fastest. So maybe it'll help. I certainly think it helps Jameer Latimer. Jameer Latimer looks faster. I think Tyrell Henry looks faster. Jameer Latimer went from 21 to 1. And Tyrell Henry went from 14 to 5, and it's a good look. I love single digits. I know we're getting off track here, but love single digits. But in terms of the tight ends, losing Tucker is a big hit to go along with the big hit that you're expecting a guy to be a part of your offense for an entire offseason, and now he's not going to be there.
And the other question I would have is who would be next? Now, will you go down that far? I don't know, especially if you've got other position groups who can fill in. JT Seagreaves and Jackson McGohan would seem to be the top 2 options. I don't know that we saw a lot from either of them. McGohan is more of a pass catcher, but I think that would be a question that I would have at this point.
Yeah, because obviously Emmett Bork is the true freshman there, and he came in and played in the spring, so it's not like you would hope you don't have to use him, but he showed at times as a 3 the ability to make some plays in the passing game, but it's really going to come down to if you can block or not. If you're going to use multiple tight ends, that's what it's going to come down to. With that 12 personnel is just, yeah. All right. So tight end, we know that depth chart, the way it looks. Let's jump into the offensive line. We'll get to the wide receivers last. The offensive line, it feels like we know what the first unit is, right? You want to lay it out for everybody?
Yes. So
assuming everyone's healthy.
Yeah. So the top 5, if healthy, you've got left tackle Davis Heinsohn. Then you've got Joe Brunner at left guard, Jake Renfro at center. You've got
Emerson Mandel.
Thank you. Emerson Mandel at right guard, easy for me to say, and then Davis or Riley Mahlman at right tackle. I think the unfortunately for the Badgers, Renfro got hurt, so I know on Saturday he was doing a little light individual work, and that's
Yep.
encouraging. They
Yep.
said initially it was week to week, wasn't ruled out for the opener. We'll see where that stands. I don't think you can talk about the top group without talking about what is next, but we can stick with the top group. To me, of that 5, the one I'm most curious to see what happens is Davis Heinsohn,
Yep.
because AJ Blazik acknowledged he maybe is not your typical tackle at this level in terms of length. He's listed at 6'5". We've seen Wisconsin has tackles often 6'7", 6'8". There were some situations where the edge defenders really took advantage of him. And there's something to be said for him improving over time. That's a tough spot to be placed in coming from Central Michigan, even if you've started 30 games at the position. But will he be able to hold up at a critical spot against some of the defenses they're going to face? But he consistently held that role other than, say, a day or two. They kicked Joe Brunner out to tackle. They worked with some other guys. But for the vast majority of practices, he was in that one spot. So that is the top 5 O-line, again, if healthy.
Excuse me. The thought of maybe moving Joe out and moving Davis inside is certainly something that is a possibility. We saw that a couple days. I will say during one-on-ones, they used Joe Brunner at left tackle and Davis Heinsohn at left tackle. So I think they're at least considering it, that possibility. And again, I don't know that Joe Brunner's the prototypical left tackle either, but would you feel more comfortable with him at left tackle than Davis Heinsohn? you personally? As an offensive line connoisseur,
as an O-line,
as an expert,
everything down.
Yeah.
I certainly like that idea, because I think Brunner has the versatility and nastiness and will to succeed. And it's not like playing guard is foreign to Heinsohn. He did start 6 games at that position, started the first 6 games a year ago at guard for Central Michigan. At least they have that option, and that would seem like the first option on the table for Blazek. But I think it comes down to how consistent Heinsohn can be dealing with some of those edge defenders, and you may not know until you get into the thick of it. But I can see a situation where you get into it and you just make that switch, because ultimately what you don't want, first of all, you don't want your quarterback blown up on the blind side, but you also want to feel like you can run the ball effectively to that side of the field. The last thing you want to do is feel hamstrung, where like, all right, we got an offense, we have to go up the middle or we have to go to the right because we don't feel comfortable going to that side. I'm not saying that's the spot Wisconsin is in, but of those 5, that's the one still where you want to make sure he can be consistent, because I will say Emerson Mandel, wow, the potential that dude has. There were the first 2 practices, they had him there. Midway through the second, they made a switch, and a day or two that he wasn't with the ones, at least initially, and basically held it down from there. And Grimes talked about he is one of those rare people who, and I'm paraphrasing, can single-handedly stop one of those interior defensive guys, those big dudes, because he's got that physicality. So really impressed with he's been able to do. The question, of course, is can that top 5 stay healthy, and can it be effective?
It's a big question. And it's also, I wonder if they don't feel comfortable with Davis Heinsohn at left guard, whether Kerry Kadenko could play left guard. And when he gets healthy, right? Like he is going to be back, you would assume, very quickly as well. Is that a possibility for him to play guard? Because I think that's certainly something that he can do. I don't know that he was in the competition at right guard until there was the issue with the snapping with the backup at center. And so then they moved him to center. And then that's just where he's been in camp. And Emerson Mandel's been slotted in at right guard. Or, can JP Benshaw move up and play guard? They have some options at guard. They just don't have a ton of options at tackle. That you would feel comfortable with right now, putting on a field against a Alabama or an Oregon or an Ohio State.
Yeah, Kerry Kadenko strikes me as your number 6 because he is versatile, because he's got experience. Obviously, he can play center. He's played guard. We can talk about the center situation. Maybe we should. I think Benchwall would be in that mix as well. If you go 8, who is it? It depends what position you're looking at. Colin Cubberly is certainly in that mix. Now, Leighton Nelson, I don't know if they think he's ready as a tackle. He's played both spots. But the center, it got real interesting real fast because you had
Oof.
Renfro who was out, then you had Kadinko who was dinged up, and what that did was it moved Ryan Corey, who'd been working with the twos, up to the ones. I actually think once he got moved up to the ones, he improved over time, but it was an issue earlier in camp, and that in part was why you had Kadinko working with the twos. And then you're in a spot where you are just you have your emergency lights on because you have to figure out who can work with the twos or the threes. You're moving guys who haven't done it. So you had like Nolan Davenport and Logan Powell, who just got here working at center. And I'd say there were some consistent snap issues. And it's not like that is unexpected because these guys are tackles or guards in high school. You're not playing center. And now you're having to do it in the heat of the moment in practice. But it definitely got interesting. They do have Ryan Corey, though. I think he afforded himself well at the end, but that's a young guy who hasn't played as well.
Let's run the second team line left to right.
Oh man. Okay. So got Leighton Nelson, right? I think he
was back and forth. I mean, he was back and forth left and right.
Yeah. You've got JP Benchwall, Ryan Corey with the twos, and then Kerry Kadinko, Cubberly. Like, I think it just depends on who's healthy.
Yeah. Well,
I missed right tackle.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think Nolan Davenport wasn't it. Yeah. I thought Nelson was playing. Leighton Nelson was playing right tackle, and they had one of the young guys playing left tackle.
Nolan Davenport
or could have been tackle. Could have been both. Could have been either way. But there are young guys, highly recruited young guys. But again, the injury to Kevin Haywood was just so massive for this entire line. It really just threw everything into flux, at least in my opinion, because they just didn't have, like, it was spring. And yeah, they were able to go out and get Davis Hines in, but if it had happened last year and you knew you weren't going to have him this year, you would have been able to go in the portal and get you would think a high level guy, right? Like a guy that you could just stick in there and feel good about and not have to worry about. Those are expensive, certainly, but they would have known how important the spot was because they know what they have on their team. So, but it is what it is. They have to deal with it. And I think Joe Brunner eventually maybe be that guy at left tackle, and they'll figure out left guard as they go. We'll see. The other spot we haven't touched on the offense is wide receiver. Well, we did touch it a little bit, but the starting group feel comfortable saying Vinny Anthony, feel comfortable about saying Tresh Kekahuna. I'm not so sure about the other spot just yet because Jaden Ballard, we felt, was going to be that guy. He had a very quiet camp, and some other guys have been given opportunities there, including Chris Brooks.
Yep, I would have said the expectation is Anthony and Ballard on the outside with Kekahuna in the slot. If you got three receivers on the field in that setting, but yeah, Ballard didn't necessarily do a ton, and Grimes did say he believed that the defense did a really good job of taking away some of those deep balls. On the other hand, if you want to be a starter caliber wide receiver, you got to make some plays. And I don't know necessarily that he was targeted a ton, but what I will say is Chris Brooks Jr. got an awful lot of those opportunities at that spot. And while he isn't the downfield burner that we saw out of Ballard in the spring, because there was a day in the spring where he caught like 3 deep balls for touchdowns.
Yeah,
he is the best blocker on the team. He can still catch the ball, and he's physical enough to outmaneuver some of those guys who are going to try and defend him. So he's definitely going to have a big role in this offense. And he's been hurt for so long that we just haven't gotten to see him for an extended period of time. What I'm also curious to see is how deep does this wide receiver room go? Because not unlike many years, you can say there's a lot of individual talent, but we know not all of them are going to play, especially in an offense like this where you want to run the ball as much as you're going to in this scheme. But like, I'll stop there. I mean, if you've got different opinions on where we're at so far, that's fine, because I could go on for the other 4 or 5 wide receivers.
Yeah, no, I think the Ballard thing is certainly interesting because he does have the speed that you would want in that they haven't had on that side, right? They've had they've had speed on one side, but maybe not speed on both sides. And that's what you thought Jaden Ballard was going to do. And I know Vinny Anthony was excited about that. And I still think it's certainly a possibility it could happen. I think the obviously the intriguing thing is the different ways that they've used Tyrell Henry and exactly how they get the ball in his hands, because he's actually a pretty elusive guy when he gets the ball in his hands. And then obviously the huge one, and asked Jeff Grimes about it the other day, and it's the guy that we've been talking about, and very clear he's going to play, and that's Eugene Hilton Jr. And where exactly he's going to line up, he's done some stuff on the outside, but he's also done some stuff in the slot. Tretch had a little bit of a quieter fall camp as well. But and you've said this since spring, just throw the ball to Hilton. He's going to catch it. And that's exactly what Jeff Grimes said, essentially. He goes, he's among our best receivers, that he's going to run the route as it's supposed to be, and he's going to catch the ball. That seems like a rather significant thing to be in a wide receiver.
I just love Hilton as a player. He instantly stood out in spring ball. I mentioned this before, but even in these summer workouts, you can see based on who they're putting those young guys are in weight room workouts, what they think of them. And it's all veteran guys. It was Jaden Ballard. It was guys like Austin Brown, because you want to learn from those people, but you're doing it because you want to put them in position to play right now. And absolutely, I think I put this in my story for Monday. He's too good not to play. And I had that in the story before Jeff Grimes even said that, but it just confirmed what they think of him. You put the ball in his area, he's probably going to catch it. There's a play on Saturday during the scrimmage, and I realize this isn't 1v1s, but it's 4th down at the 6-yard line, and he comes across the field and he catches a ball in the right corner of the end zone for a touchdown. And it's just like, there's a safety right on him, right behind him, but just put him in a position. And when you do that consistently, it's tough to say you can't play. So we'll see what that looks like. And I'd also say the physicality and the stuff you're going to see this season is a little bit different from even practice and certainly from high school, but he has stood out most to me. And then it's, where do these other guys fit in? You mentioned Tyrell Henry. I certainly think there's a role for him. When Tretch was hurt and couldn't play in the spring, Tyrell probably took advantage of his reps more than any other wide receiver, I felt. DeKel Crowdis was a spring transfer addition. I think he does a lot of the same things that a Tyrell Henry does in terms of get him the ball in space and see what he can do. But if you had to pick between the two, Henry would seem like the first guy. Again, you can't play everyone. And then Joe Griffin. What do you do with Joe Griffin Jr.? There are some times where he makes big plays. He caught a 74-yard touchdown pass. There was a red zone ball that he caught. Grimes said he thinks that Griffin is their best go up and get it 50-50 guy, but can't play all these guys.
No, he can't.
That's the spot they're in.
Yeah, there's not enough. There's not enough snaps and passes to go around, and they're going to get the ball in the wide receiver's hands in different ways. We know that, but it's an interesting. I mean, Eugene Hilton Jr. has been too good not to have a role, and that's what Jeff Grimes said. When I asked the question, I'm like, if he has a role, and he laughed. He's like, yeah, he's gonna have a role. He's gonna play. He's gonna be in the rotation for sure. What exactly that looks like is going to be one of the more interesting things to figure out here. But dude's good. Dude needs to play. Flipping over to the other side of the ball, the defensive line, and if it's 1st and 10 for the opposing offense, they bring in 11 personnel. Who are your defensive linemen?
Yeah, so when you say defensive line, I'm really thinking of the interior D-line, because
we'll talk about the outside linebackers later.
Right. Off the edge, it's a little bit different. Parker Peterson and Brandon Lane look like they are the early down run stuffers. And I have to say, of all the guys on defense, maybe the one who most pleasantly surprised me was Lane, largely because when he came a year ago, I thought he was going to be an impact player, and we did not see a ton of him. I think he played fewer than 100 snaps. I want to say he played more than double-digit snaps in a game 2 or 3 times last season, and yet was consistently in there. I think he made a lot of plays. There's one play from that scrimmage. He just got in the backfield and blew it up and stopped Cade Yakimelli for a 5-yard loss. I don't know that that's going to be a consistent theme this season, but the fact he was in there as much as he did speaks to what they think of him. So that would be my thought on who you pair there. But what's so interesting about that interior group is, unlike the last few years when you said you wanted to have 6 and it was clear they did not, they really have that this year, because you can put Perkins in there, Charles Perkins with Ben Barton. Javier Suggs got a ton of reps. Dylan Johnson got a ton of reps. All 6 of those guys are going to play. And that doesn't even factor in some of those edge guys that you can move inside, like a Michael Garner or a Daryl Peterson, who we know bulked up and can do some different things. So you have a variety of options in a way that I don't think they had the last 2 years.
I would agree with that. And they needed it. And again, I think we've hit this point a ton, both in spring and in fall camp, and that's just the different body types that they can throw at teams, and the multiple 300-pounders, not just the defensive linemen, but the Michael Garners and the Corey Walkers, who obviously Corey missed some time this with fall camp with a back injury, but was back. He was back. Didn't get a ton of scrimmage action. A lot of the guys that I think that they know what they have in did not get a ton of scrimmage action, like a Mason Reiger as well. So, but the defensive line with that 2 deep, it does go 6, and you're going to need that because at the end of the season, look at the teams that they play at the end of the season, right? Teams that are going to try and run the ball down your throat, you need it, and that's in Illinois, Minnesota, obviously in what's happening in October as well. But you're going to need multiple guys to be able to stay healthy throughout the entire year. And I think they have at least the numbers to do it. Now, does it actually stop the run?
It better.
I have no idea.
First last year.
I have no idea though, right? I don't know. I don't think they know. You put a lot of effort into fixing it. We'll see if it actually was fixed. I just don't know. All right. Outside linebackers / edge / guys that have their hands on the ground.
At
different times.
It could go any number of directions. It ultimately depends on what situation they're in. So
Peterson's a starter, though.
Huh?
Daryl Peterson's a starter.
Daryl Peterson, Corey Walker when healthy. But you had so many situations where you got Mason Reiger on the field with a Daryl Peterson, or it's Reiger and Sebastian Cheeks. Yep. Tyrese Fearbry, I think, made a lot of noise toward the end and would let you know about it because he'd be screaming about making the play. All Absolutely. Of those guys are going to play in some capacity. It just depends on the circumstance. But that is part of what's so interesting about this group. And to go back to what we're saying about the line, with these variety of bodies, you got that 297-pound Corey Walker who's going to be vital to setting the edge. But then you've got the 255-pound type guys who are a little twitchier. It's just a matter of how productive can that group collectively be, because it wasn't nearly productive enough a year ago. I would say I'd like to say I feel better about this, but I even included this caveat in the story that I wrote. Like a year ago, we spent so much time talking about Leon Lowry and John Pius. So to see Mason Reiger make these plays is impressive now, but you need to see it in the season. They did do what they could to address their deficiencies. So that I think that's the best that you can say. And they have a lot of guys who made a lot of plays this preseason.
Yes, they did. Inside linebacker, Christian Allegro and Taka Curtis have been the guys. And then obviously there's also that star position that Aaron Witt has been involved in, or has been lining up at, and we'll see exactly how often it gets used. But the true inside linebackers with Christian Allegro and Taka Curtis, they're your 1-2, or I should say your top 2 there, even though Christian's been in and out. Behind him is where it gets really intriguing and where a lot of excitement, I think, lies, whether it's Cooper Catalano, whether it's Mason Posa, whether it's Thomas Heiberger, whether it's even Garrison Soliday has had some moments, right? There are intriguing pieces behind those top 2.
Yes. To start with on Witt, I will be curious to see how many snaps he ultimately gets, because it's a very specific situation when you use him. They have him more off the ball. They have him playing in space more. And there were a couple times where if they put the ball in front of him, he came up and delivered some really hard hits. So he showed that he can be effective in that role. But on those inside spot or those other 2 guys, I think that might be the position that has the most talent for the future out of any position group, that gets you excited, as it should, because of what Wisconsin has been able to establish at linebacker. Thomas Heiberger is really intriguing. Talked to him last week, and he mentioned he dislocated his kneecap twice, once last season in fall camp in Platteville, because we remember Matt Mitchell said he was in position to have a role, and he got hurt, and he came back and played a little bit, but obviously that was a big setback. Then he dislocated the kneecap again this spring. He said he underwent surgery. He's got a brace on it, but he's got a lot of potential. Cooper Catalano, that dude, you want to talk about Eugene Hilton Jr. always being able to catch the ball when it's around him. He is in the area, Catalano is, and made a ton of tackles. I thought it was funny when Mike Tressel was asked about Catalano. He's like, maybe he's not, you look at him and it's not a 5-star type of guy, but you're charting at the end of the practice and you're like, oh, this dude made 20 tackles. Well, that's about accurate. That's how you lead the state of Wisconsin in career tackles. He's absolutely going to have a role. Mason Posa is so exciting to me. I think if he were here in the spring, you might see him this year. He had to go win a 4th straight New Mexico State Wrestling Championship, but a lot of explosiveness and power out of those two guys. I just think they hit absolute home runs with that recruiting class to get Catalano and Posa. And we'll see how many snaps those guys ultimately get, because that's another thing. If you feel really good about Allegro and Curtis and those guys are healthy, do you want to take them off the field? For how long do you want to take them off the field? But you can't just play two guys given who you're going to play. So if I had to pick, I'll throw this back on you. If you had a 2 deep and you said, here are our 2s at inside linebacker, who would you have?
I would have Catalano and probably Saladay at this point. But who would I want to have? Catalano and Posa.
Or Heiberger.
Yes, but he's still transitioning. He's still getting healthy. Like we saw him in there. He was cleared, but he's still wearing the brace. And I know he was not happy having to wear the brace. And he's also, he moving from outside to inside is not something that I don't know that he was overly excited about. He was attacking it, but I don't know that it was something that he was expecting. And so I think it's still a little bit of a transition for him. I think he played that in high school, at least a little bit. So it's not like it's completely foreign, but it's not easy to do that, especially when you came here for a reason. But the other two are just stars in the making, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. So, and we'll see, maybe Tackett or maybe Christian, they get dinged up and you are going to get somebody else in there. We know that Tackett played dinged up last year. If he's dinged up and he's not 100%, you have to feel good about the guys behind him. And so they have the ability to play both spots, the Mike and the Sam. So they have the ability to move guys and be able to flip guys and play different roles. So it's an exciting group for sure. Who would you be? Who would your 2 be?
I probably agree with you. I mean, it's got to be Catalano in there. Saladay got a ton of reps, but for sheer excitement and potential, I want to see Posa. I mean, heck, yeah. That's why I wrote about him the second week I was at Badger Connect. Like, this dude, you watch his highlight film, it's just ridiculous. And I've said this before, but I compared him to, when you watch it, the Leo Chanel, the Nick Herbig, where you just see them and you go, okay, that is a star right there. So It is hard, though, when you don't get here until the summer and you're behind these other guys who got the 15 spring practices, because they have 13 or 14 freshmen early enrollees. So the fact that he's making the strides that he's made in such a short period of time speaks to his potential. And even Trussell was talking about it, like, would have liked to have had him during that time. And maybe you still need some improvement in certain areas, but the mentality, the attacking mentality, the will to win is there right now.
Yep, absolutely. At corner, let's do the slot first. Jameer Latimer is your guy. He's been there the entire spring. You have the ability to bring a guy like an Austin Brown down there and do it, but it's been Jameer Latimer. And then obviously Owen Arnett, who has consistently been the second team slot for the last 3 years, at least in practice. And I think who else they have there? I think they had Raphael Dunn there for a little bit as well. Might have been Remington Moss. They have Jameer Latimer is your guy, and if he were to go down, I think they would move Austin Brown to that slot spot. But I thought he had a really good really good fall, and I think they think so as well, because you're not giving a guy the number 1 if you didn't have a really good camp.
Yep, I agree. Latimer was great. He's your number 1. He'll probably handle every slot snap, assuming he's healthy. And if you do get into a bind, they'll probably list Arnett as the backup. And that's not to say he won't play. I mean, it's not like we saw Austin Brown getting reps in the slot where it's a just in case situation, but maybe they just feel like, all right, we know what we got.
Right.
So Latimer, I mean, he's your guy. Kind of like when Jason Maitre came in. It's like, okay, well, they need someone to fill that role. He's going to be that guy, and you just know he's going to be in there for every snap.
You also get him for a couple years, and I don't think he's going to bow out of a bowl game and then go train somewhere else, right? Either way, Jameer Latimer. At the outside spots, we know Ricardo Hallman is going to be at one spot, and the other one still feels up for grabs.
Yeah, I would have said Emilio Agard after 2 weeks, but then you look on Saturday, they have Deone Hill getting a lot of the one reps. But Agard made a ton of plays, multiple interceptions. Paul Haynes said both of them were going to play. He's looking at it like some type of split of snaps between those two. And that's certainly what it looks like at this point. Maybe it's a situation of if someone is playing well early, they end up getting more snaps. I guess if I had to pick, I'd say Hill, but I don't feel confident about that. And I don't even know how much it matters. Rico, when healthy, and even if he's not fully healthy, is going to be out there. So much more physical. When I asked Haynes about Rico and the decision to come back, one of the things he said was he needed to become a better or more sure, consistent tackler. And in order to do that, you need to bulk up and be more physical. Now, he was dinged up, and this is where things got interesting. This is not going to be a guy on the depth chart at all, but I just thought it was fascinating how they utilized Nazir Forkurine. We know about the court situation and the suit against the NCAA, the fact that it's not happening until September 29th. So at minimum, you're missing 4 games because the NCAA, out of the goodness of its heart, is not going to reverse course. And yet he got a ton of one reps. And when I asked Haynes about it, he said it was more about you look across the split of reps, it's even, and maybe even those young guys are getting more of the one reps, but he got a bunch of one reps. I just thought that was really interesting. And I don't know if it's just to keep him sharp. Strange when you're not going to play the first month.
I mean, look where he was playing though, too, right? It was a ton of field snaps, and he's a boundary guy. So
where Rico was.
Yes, right.
So maybe it was just to give, and this would make sense too, give the offense a look of someone who is a starter level. That makes sense too. But
yeah,
tough to project the depth chart when you got a guy who's not going to be in the depth chart, at least initially.
If Rico is not available, things get a little dicey, I think, a little bit. Would you agree? Kairos Gaines took a ton of those reps, and then it's Jameer Scott and not much, like in terms of like guys that would be ready to go. It's a very thin room. They need these guys to stay healthy.
Yes, they have 7 scholarship corners when you exclude Forkurine, and we've already talked about most of them. You got Latimer in the slot, you got Rico, Agard, Hill. That's 4, and then you have 3 freshmen. Jamari Washington, the other one, who made a handful of plays though with the reserves. I don't know whether that.
I don't. Ball just finds him.
Yes,
the ball just finds him.
But I think of those 3. And you mentioned Scott. Scanes, to me, is the one who is closest to playing based on the reps that he got. But I'm with you. If you have a situation where Rico is hurt, it throws some things into flux because you obviously don't have Forkurine either. And those were your 2 starting corners on the outside a year ago.
Yeah. At safety, you know who the 2 are. It's Preston Zachman. It's Austin Brown. A lot of options behind him. Matthew Traynor brings it every single play. Very physical. But Matt Young also had a really good camp too. And there's some other bodies there as well.
This feels like the easiest 2 deep I could pick because it's those 4.
Yeah.
Brown and Zachman. Everything you could want in the back end. There was a play, I want to say it was Friday, that sort of highlighted what they do. It was a ball down the left sideline, and Austin Brown was in coverage in front, and Preston Zachman came over, and he picked off the pass right before he stepped out of bounds. That's just kind of what those guys do. There's a veteran savviness to them and experience, but to go to the portal and get Young and Traynor really impacts the back end because it also means you feel confident if you need to move an Austin Brown around. But yeah, Traynor, that dude is among the hardest hitters on the entire defense. I don't care if you're a D lineman, like he will come up and just destroy you. And so you like to see that. Young consistently around the ball. You don't get 16 picks and 6 pick sixes at the D3 level without knowing how to play the position. And to me, it feels like the transition has been relatively seamless. So there's a lot to like about those 4 guys at safety.
Yeah. Getting at Tuca on Saturday, ran through Kairos Gaines, and then Traynor was right after him, and they both delivered big hits on each other and then just stared at each other. And we're like, yeah, you like that? And both of them thought they got the better of the other guy. I thought it was pretty much right down the middle. I love the attitude he plays with. I also love the attitude that Kamoi Latu played with, and I feel like there's some similarities there in the way that they play for sure. But Yeah, you would think next year Young and Trainer would be your guys after Preston and Austin Brown move on. But I even like some of the young guys too, right? Like a Grant Dean.
Yes.
And I'm excited to see exactly where his career goes because I think he's certainly athletic enough for it, and he's got a little bit of a nose for the ball too. But it's another strong room, I think, future wise, right? Based on you talked about the inside linebacker room, I feel good about the safety room moving forward as well. We'll see.
Very much
Again,
so. Grant Dean, Luke Emmerich, and Dean got a lot of 2 reps too, which is worth noting.
Yeah, for sure. All right, special teams. Let's start with the job that doesn't appear to be decided just yet. Kicker, right? But by all accounts, maybe not. You think it's going to be Nathaniel Bakos?
I think so. I don't know if I've seen him miss. And again, it's not like every day they're going out there.
He missed a 52-yarder the other day. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Wide left. I forgot about that.
Yep.
Yep. But for the most part, I think it will be him. I do think it means there'll be a shorter leash because Gavin Lom has pushed him every step of the way. Gavin can absolutely bomb them, but Gavin, I would expect to be the kickoff specialist at the start of the season. And the good news is if something happens, you have someone fully capable of stepping in. That has been probably the closest competition of any position group, but not officially decided at this point.
Yeah, that in corner, right? That in the between Emilio Agard and Deone Hill, a very close competition. Punter, I still think it's going to be Atticus Bertram's, but I know that at times Luke has said that was it Sean West that's pushing him?
I think so. I don't know. I mean, Bertram's is a 2-year starter who was maybe your MVP a year ago. So unless he's gotten markedly worse, I think he's
you just call him the MVP?
Yes. Well, it was a 5-7 season. So who are you going to pick from? Vinny? I put Atticus in the conversation. Absolutely.
Okay. Hey, I'm not judging you for that. I'm just asking.
It's probably in the top 3 MVP conversation. Yeah. That's the
Well, he did have one of the best runs of the year, right?
Against longest run of that game, right?
Oh, I mean, it might have been the longest play of that game for them. I meant, yeah. Was he talking? Yeah. I don't remember the exact guy that Luke said was pushing him, which I think maybe would indicate that he's not actually pushing him.
Or we're just
either way
failing to remember.
I'm trying to remember because there's been one of the special team guys has been doing stairs the entire fall camp.
That's Stone Anderson, I believe.
Okay, then the other one, then Sean West is the one that's pushing him. It was one of the two. 91 and 92, and I couldn't remember exactly which one was doing the stairs. Either way, irrelevant. Punt returner, for me, it feels like it's going to be Tyro Henry and Tretch, but maybe Vinny Anthony thrown in there too.
Yeah, I'd say so. They both can do it. It's just a matter of can you catch the ball. I don't think anything's decided there. When we watch practice, there's one segment where there are returners, and you have some other guys who are gunners, and then they come down. And Jane Ballard's been in that group too. Vinny, I just think Vinny strikes me as your top kickoff guy based on what he's done, and I cannot see them utilizing him on both of those return jobs and being your number one wide receiver. So that would leave the door open for some of these other guys. It's just about having sure hands. And can you be an occasional difference maker there? Both those guys, in terms of Tyrell and Tretch, have that ability.
Yeah, for sure. And then kick returner.
My assumption is it's going to be Vinny. In the limited opportunities we've seen where they do kickoffs, they just put a bunch of dudes back there, and they kind of have a set on the left side, a set on the right side. You could throw Darian Dupree in there. You could throw anybody in there if you're fast and athletic. I just think Vinny's done it. He's trusted, and he was one of the best kickoff returners statistically in the country, or at least as a team. Wisconsin ranked among the top end in kick returns. So why mess with a good thing?
Yep. That is the depth chart for the Badgers at this point. We'll get an actual depth chart probably a week from today as they get ready for their Thursday night game against Miami of Ohio. We'll be back a couple of times this week. We got our preview show coming up on, we're going to record it on Thursday, put it out Friday, but we've got some other shows coming up. Hopefully some good guests as well. We were knocked going to be going away just because there's no football availability this week. We're actually going to work. I'm going to work, I should say. You always work, but I'm going to put in some work this week as well. But getting close to football, actual football. Looking forward to it. Jesse, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach.
All right, there he is, Jesse Temple from Badger Connect. You've been listening to The Camp.